on a complete whim, simply because of the bandwagon and the rumor mill, I decided to take a look at Skinamarink. It says it's a Shudder original. It went on to Shudder after a brief theatrical release. It made a lot of money because it was made on a very small budget, which, in regards to the filmmaking process behind movies like this, like Skinamarink, like all the other types of films that are experimental with it, like Blair Witch, Paranormal Activity, the first one, I can appreciate how you could use a shoestring budget of like $15,000 to $25,000 and make a feature-length film and then make millions in profit. Even if you made just a couple $100,000, if you put just $15,000 into this, you made a profit. I'm pretty sure this made a couple million. I'm not exactly sure the precise amount in the box office, but it was successful. And I am very proud of the director of this. I think it's their directorial debut. A lot of people have said this already. The guy is called... oh my goodness, where is the dude's name? Produced, assistant director, director of photography. Here we go. A Kyle Edward Ball film. There's a couple other people who were involved, like Edmund Rotea, producer, assistant director Joshua Buckhalter, director of photography Jamie McRae, and there's some people who took part in the making of the film, but the director, I already forgot his name. The director, Kyle Edward Ball, is the one you want to look at. This is his film. I'm pretty sure this might even be his house. I'm not too sure about that. But it was made very cheaply, $15,000. They added a few effects to the film, like film grain, to make it look like old-timey 50s, 40s, 30s types of home video. I doubt there was home video back then, but old-timey film grain type of sound and picture. Most of the film is going to have this background noise from public domain classic cartoons. These are things that you could look up on YouTube right now and put on in the background for hours. And that might even be what this guy did, I'm not too sure. But there's a lot of things in here that are nostalgic to me. It just feels like a nostalgic fever dream when you watch this film. There's a CRT TV, and as a product of the 90s, I remember CRT TVs. They're my childhood. I've had one throughout my childhood and early teenagehood. Even when HD TVs were coming out, I was using the old hand-me-down CRT for a few years until I finally got the HD TV. But I remember CRTs, and when I saw that CRT in that film, the static sound, the classic, the real static sound, they were using real CRT probably, and those old VHS tapes scattered around. This took place in the 90s. It was very nostalgic to watch this film. It was very almost comforting in a way. People have called this the scariest movie they've ever seen. And maybe that failed for me, and I do want to talk about some of the cons for this film, because it didn't exactly do the best that it could have in that area, but I think it succeeded in other ways to make up for it. As a film as a whole, to do the TLDR, TLDW, I was not incredibly impressed by the film's story, if for lack thereof of one. I thought it was kind of pretentious. I thought it was too vague. I thought that 30 minutes of the film wasn't exactly needed, but you need to have a feature length, so maybe you could cut at least 20 minutes out and get it from 100 to 80 minutes, and it would still be a decent enough flick. But there are a lot of shots in here of just staring at the wall with the classic cartoon noise playing in the background, with some film noise and grain and all that stuff from the old-timey video camera aesthetic. Overall, this film is an aesthetic. It's not necessarily a story. It's an aesthetic. When you put this film in and you watch it, you're going to be getting an aesthetic. You're not necessarily going to be getting a deep, rich story. Now, Paranormal Activity, the first one, was made for the same amount of money, I believe, $15,000. Though $15,000 back then, 20 years ago, was a lot. It's worth more than $15,000 today. So technically, this was made on a smaller budget. Because if Paranormal Activity 1 was made on $15,000 today, I don't think it'd be able to do as much as it was able to do back then, if that makes sense. Either way, Paranormal Activity and Skinamarink were doing two very different things. Paranormal Activity was shot using a bunch of consumer-grade video cameras. Digital video, the quality is pretty good. And they left shots, lingering shots, on various rooms with nothing happening, and the viewer was the one composing the story, and the viewer was the one getting scared, thinking there was something there when there might not actually be anything there for the first half of the movie. It was the viewer who was the one getting nervous and anxious watching the film, watching all these cameras staring at an empty room with nothing happening. And their apprehension and tension was building with the absence of sound and music and any of that stuff. So when something did just slightly move to the side like that, the audience did jump a little bit. I thought the filmmaking qualities and ideas in the first Paranormal Activity were incredible. I really like that first film. I even like the sequels up to the fifth one. They're very good. And I even think the seventh one, the spin-off, was pretty good. I don't think it fits with the Paranormal Activity aesthetic, but I liked it. But that's going off topic a little bit too much. The reason why I wanted to bring up the first one, though, was that this film does a lot of similar things. It has lingering shots on rooms and other things where nothing is actually happening. It's just giving you an aesthetic, giving you your own viewer's nervousness, viewer's tension. You're the one thinking that there's something there. You're the one thinking that something's going to happen in this scene, so you're going to be staring at it. You're going to be watching it. You're going to be looking for things that are happening. Maybe there's something off in the little corner that's going to be moving slightly to the side or something. You have to pay attention to that, and nothing's probably going to happen in the shot, but you're thinking that something's going to happen in the shot. But while I can appreciate a film technique like that, especially for your lack of budget, you're gonna give the viewer the film qualities and changes and editing and all that stuff that the film doesn't ever actually happen. You're you're letting their imagination think that it's there. You're gonna let them think that something's happening despite nothing actually happening at all. And I can really appreciate that. I really can. But this is like the aesthetic that cried wolf. There's a little bit too much in there to the point where, alright, you've done this too many times, movie. I have lost the aesthetic, and now I'm just staring there waiting for you to get on with it. The last 30 minutes was me just standing there, sitting there, waiting for the film to get on with it. Get on with it. You're dragging on too long. There's nothing really going on anymore. And then the final few minutes were pretty good. There is an effect in the last few minutes of the film. I'm not going to spoil what it is. But it was... I was admittedly unnerved. Pretty badly unnerved. The techniques in this is like not showing you things. If Paranormal Activity showed you the whole room and let you see the whole thing that was going on, if there was something going to happen, usually there wasn't, but if Paranormal Activity is the one that showed you the whole aesthetic, then Skinamarink is the one that takes it all away. It dims the room. It gives you a lot of audio decay. It gives you a lot of film grain decay. It minimizes the shot on small specific areas. You have the sound distraction of the classic cartoon and the TV. It takes a lot away from you, and it tries to expect you to appreciate that type of artsy experimental aesthetic, when most of the mainstream audience is probably going to pass this film by and think, you know what, this isn't for me, I'm kind of bored. I am in the middle. I could really appreciate this film. I really appreciated what this was doing, and for the first hour, I was honestly with it. It was a decent aesthetic. It felt like watching a fever dream. It's like watching the dream of a kid back in the 90s. They go to bed, and they have a nightmare. Their parents are gone. The doors and the windows of the house are gone, and they're just left wondering what they're supposed to do. And like a dream, things start to get weird. Things start maybe sitting on the ceiling. Chairs might be upside down on the ceiling. There might be things moving in the shadows, creepy, nightmarishly stuff. And it's like, it really feels like you're watching a dream take place, unfold before your very eyes. And that might be what the actual meaning behind this is. There are a lot of ending explains and other stuffs in various reviews, from the actual Wikipedia entry to various Google reviews. When you look the Google reviews for these people to the other videos of people talking about this movie on this site, everybody's got something to say, and that's something that I can honestly appreciate, because despite this film actually having anything in it, it does elicit the discourse, the film discourse. It gets people talking about it. And the more people talk about it, the more exposure it gets, and it gets spread around. Honestly, like chainmail. It keeps getting spread around, and the person you respect talks about it, and then you go like, alright, well, I gotta talk about it. And then somebody who respects you might say, oh, this guy's talking about it, and then, oh, I gotta talk about it. And it's just gonna keep spreading. And eventually it is going to die, it is going to fade away. But maybe, just maybe, Skinamarink is going to become just like Blair Witch, just like Paranormal Activity, the first one. It's going to be one of those movies that are like the first one that did a thing like this. And now we're probably going to get a bunch of movies, maybe small budget, maybe a little bit higher budget, but the aesthetic that Skinamarink introduced, we're probably going to see a lot more films like this in the next few years. And it's probably going to be thanks to Skinamarink. And that's probably going to cause a lot of discourse, and maybe people might look on this a little bit too unfondly. People might look on it fondly and look on the copycats in disdain. But who knows? All I know is that this film is at least historically important. It is important to movie making in general. It is important to the story of a director who wanted to make a movie, and now they're going to go off to do some pretty interesting things, at least I hope. Good luck to you, Mr. Director. Give this film a look, but I have to warn you, dear viewer. I have to warn you, this is not... Well, if you've seen Paranormal Activity, you might be expecting... You probably be able to handle this. If you've seen Paranormal Activity, you've seen Blair Witch, if you're interested in movies like this, you're probably going to be fine with this one. Just don't expect anything to happen. Things might happen, but things might not happen in the way you might expect them to. If you can appreciate that, then give it a watch. But if you're one of those people who just watched Fast and Furious, The Conjuring, Chucky, Annabelle, all those type of films, the bombastic, big stuff going on, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween. If you're watching that stuff and you expect this to be like that, it's not going to be like that, so it's not going to be for you. But if you like watching experimental films, if you like movie making in general, give it a look. Definitely give it a look.